Good morning. This is great. Welcome to day 3 of our Minnesota, Wisconsin Fall Conference and Expo. I trust that everyone is enjoying themselves, having a great time, making new connections, reconnecting with old friends, and just taking it all in as we look and work hard to make our systems better for our communities that we serve. I would like to kick off our next session titled Agency Update. Joining us for this session will be Tori Hill, Ian Ritz, and Nick Thompson. Ian Ritz is currently the chief of the transit section at the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, where he has worked since 2010. He is passionate about public and specialized transportation because it provides important mobility options for the people to commute to work, attend school, make medical appointments, and participate in other essential daily activities. Tori Nill is the director of MnDOT's Office of Transit and Active Transportation. Prior to that, she served as the acting district engineer for District 4 in Detroit Lakes. In Tori's 20 years with MnDOT, she has been involved in many aspects of project development, from the chip-stip phase all the way through opening day of the state's largest public works project, the Green Line Light Rail Transit Project. Tori has also been involved in the planning, designing, construction, opening, and operating other rail projects, including North Star, Green Line Extension, Blue Line Extension, and Gold Line BRT. Nick Thompson is the new Deputy General Manager at the Metro Transit, leading the capital programs for the agency. In this position on Metro Transit's executive team, Nick leads the division responsible for the development of light rail and BRT lines, development of public and support facilities, the transit-oriented development office, and the asset management program. Prior to starting this position in July, he served as the director of the Metropolitan Transportation Services Division at the Met Council, where he led the division responsible for contracted services and the MPO. Welcome, panelists. Ian and Tori, I'll call you to the stage. Thank you.
Gonna ruin it here.
It's up.
Good morning. It's great to be here. I was thinking on the way up, driving up from Madison yesterday, how long it's been since I've seen so many people in person, and it's been a long time. So it was really great to see familiar faces, meet some new people, and I guess say hello to the folks who are participating virtually as well. So what I'm here to talk about is just a couple things. I was looking back over the past 1 to 2 years, but then also kind of, talking about the present and things that we're working on toward the future as well. So briefly, touch on overview of transit in Wisconsin, impacts of COVID from a little bit broader statewide perspective, state budget recently passed this past July, touch on the federal infrastructure bill, and then also highlight an initiative that the department has been undertaking in the last year and a half or so. Briefly, so transit in Wisconsin at a high level, we have over 70 public transit systems across the state. In Milwaukee, the largest, some of the smallest are shared ride taxis, and coverage throughout the state. Specialized transit, we have over 130 different organizations, nonprofits and public bodies. We have over $200 million, $210 to $215 million, and a regular formula federal and state dollars that we invest across urban, rural, public, and specialized transit programs. Pre-pandemic, we were looking at over 50 million rides in the public transit arena. We know predominantly work-oriented transportation, and it almost goes without saying, but I'll say it again, is COVID has had significant impacts on all of us. Here's a brief map. Hopefully, some of the the distinctions you can see, but our coverage on the public transit system is pretty broad, this is the current map for this year. So transitioning to brief discussion of COVID. First, and I try to say this every time I speak with people, but I'll say it again here, is first thank you to all of you, the people who are involved at various levels of this industry. You're the people on the front line, helping individuals in your communities continue to do what they need to do to get to work, go to medical appointments, other activities. So, thank you. It's been a tremendous effort under unprecedented circumstances. So, I'd be remiss to not say thank you to everybody. As I alluded to, it's touched every aspect of transit. Service levels, reducing hours, bringing hours back up, ridership down, trying to socially distance, keeping drivers safe, how to deal with lost revenue, being creative with staffing, shift changes, things like cleaning, all these things, getting PPE, getting cleaning solution, et cetera, it goes on and on and on. And, again, thank you. I'm aware of all the challenges that you've faced and overcome. And it's just quite remarkable that you've been able to do everything that you do in your community. So, again, just a big thank you there. The two graphs here it's kind of a snapshot of ridership. And I just wanted to pull this out because it's illustrative of, how great the impacts have been. On the left side is shared ride taxi, which is, predominantly a rural systems. One way we track ridership. 2019 is, at a high level, a little over million rides, drops down significantly. It's kind of inched back up a little bit, but you can see, we're down still, 30% roughly, something like that. On the right side, bus ridership. So again, kind of urban and rural bus systems in the state, again, strong 2019 across both halves of the year, significant reduction. In the latter part of 2020, you see that biggest reduction, kind of inching back up a little bit through the first half of this year. But again, it's roughly 50%, across the board. And, I don't think anybody has a crystal ball, of course, of how this is going to recover over the next few years, but I think we're all anticipating a protracted recovery still. So again, just some illustrative information on a statewide basis, what we've seen in Wisconsin, probably similar to how it's been experienced in Minnesota as well. So how has WisDOT been involved in this? Obviously, we're not the ones providing the service. That challenge has been laid out at the feet of the transit systems. But what we, things that we have done and tried to be as involved as we can be, which is, we've done a lot of monitoring, who's doing what, how our services being changed, how our community is reacting, what's going on. So we can advise, up and down to our state leadership and federal partners and things like that. We've tried to provide greater flexibility and creativity in our programs as much as we can. FTA allowed, some flexibility as well. We try to do the same thing on the state side. So again, just within the parameters of programs and rules and things like that, provide greater flexibility to allow people to react as best as possible. A big role that we've had relates to funding. There's been 3 rounds of federal COVID relief, CARES Act, CRISA, ARPA over the last year and a half, and unprecedented amounts of money being allocated as well. So in Wisconsin, across those 3 programs, over 445 million. Again, urban, rural, public, specialized. On a normal year from the federal level in Wisconsin, we get about 88, 89 million of formula funds. So you can see, you know, the scale is just, you know, it's just massive. You know, a discrete example, something we, you know, we help distribute FTA's or the federal government's cloth face masks. We've been trying to coordinate as closely as we can with our Department of Health Services to share information. You're probably sick of, you know, getting emails from us about, you know, vaccine updates and, you know, I think information like that. But I think, you know, that's an important role for us at the DOT. We've collected and reported a lot of data, and we try to provide, you know, technical assistance to any question, which there have been many, and just try to help people navigate their situation and just, you know, advance the program. Switching gears a little bit, so I'll highlight a couple things from our recent biennium budget, which was signed in July. There were some modest increases to several different state programs. You know, they always view any increase is a good thing, and so we're, you know, we're pleased about this. 2.5% to our paratransit aid program, 2.5% to our specialized transit program. This is the program we actually kind of combine with our federal $5310. And just to comment on this one, this program has been flat in Wisconsin for, you know, a decade or more. So we're quite pleased to get a little bit of a increase on that program. Other state funds for our WeTap, which is an employment transportation program. You know, I have to also mention, you know, there was a notable decrease to our operating assistance aids to two communities, Madison and Milwaukee, a 50% reduction in calendar year 2022. And fortunately, these dollars were offset at least partially, about 60% from Governor Evers. He used some of his discretionary ARPA funds to offset some of that reduction. Infrastructure bill, you know, I would say I don't have a ton of information on this. I mean, as kind of we're all aware, it's being negotiated pretty heavily at the federal level. It's something that we're monitoring quite closely. We did preliminary analysis when the first Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, I think is what it's called, was introduced earlier in the summer. You know, we are anticipating significant, you know, a notable increase in the formula programs, kind of the key FTA formula programs for Wisconsin. You know, our estimates so far is maybe around $30 million in those base programs. So a positive thing. I think there's, you know, a fair amount to go in DC. So we'll see how this plays out. But whenever we have some final legislation, if ever, then we'll perform analysis and share information with our partners. And the last thing I want to highlight is this is an initiative that was kicked off early 2020. It's called our Wisconsin Non-Driver Advisory Committee. So this is an initiative comprised of a number of different stakeholders across Wisconsin, several key stakeholders, you know, represented in the group here. WIPDA itself, several individual transit systems and transit managers involved. We also have mobility managers. We have Riders Alliance. And there's a lot of other, you know, non-driver types of advocacy entities as well. And so we've had several meetings so far. This is really geared around kind of better understanding of barriers to non-drivers and being, you know, young individuals, older individuals, disabled individuals, formerly incarcerated individuals, so on and so forth. So really kind of thinking about how transportation interacts with those individuals, what sort of opportunities there are, barriers, and, you know, with kind of the goal toward, you know, policy program recommendations that can be implemented. We've had several meetings so far, 3. We have another one coming up in November. It's been a really positive effort for the department with some really good input from entities. And I think it's really, honestly, I think it's helping kind of shape how we're thinking about transportation at the DOT level. So a really positive thing, something I want to highlight. Thank those who have been involved. And if you haven't been involved and want to be, you know, talk to me about it. So with that, I will take this opportunity for questions. And then if, you know, I have following questions, I'll pass it over to Tori. So any questions? No, hearing none. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tori Nill, and I'm with the Minnesota Department of Transportation, more specifically and more proudly, the Office of Transit and Active Transportation. All right. This should be easy to do down, right? Yes. All right. So do you guys remember your 7th grade geography class in Minnesota? 87 counties, right? Wisconsin, you probably didn't learn that, but we have 87 counties. And excuse me, and 7 of them are covered in the metro area. So Nick, who will be talking next, he gets to talk about the 7 counties in the metro area, but the remaining 80 counties fall into this beautiful category called Greater Minnesota Transit. And so this map is a map we like to show quite often. And this is how the state of Minnesota is covered with transit, right? These are the providers that get out there and get people to where they want to be. So we have 7 small urbans, and we have 28 rural systems, and then we have 3 of the inner city bus. And that's how people get around Minnesota on public transit. It's a beautiful map, and I can't thank you guys enough for the work that you do. All right, so MnDOT, Office of Transit and Active Transportation, we get the federal funds and the state funds, and then we get to work with our partners to get those funds out the door. And so how do we do that? Like, what should we spend that money on that we get? Clearly there's rules and regulations, but what exactly do we spend it on? So our goal in OTAT is to be transparent and predictable in our investments. And Noel out there, he's probably shaking his head, and everybody in his group going, yep, those are the words we live, breathe, sleep, eat by, right? We want to be predictable and transparent, and we're working really hard for that. So then where do we spend our money? These are the categories that we spend the money on. Operations, vehicles, facilities, new service, and then kind of newer there, this came out of the 5-year plans that I'll talk about in a little bit here, marketing and technology. So those are our categories. So how specifically do we do it? I promise I won't bore you on the slide with a lot of numbers, but what we did is we got together the Transit Advisory Council Committee, is that better, Mark? Okay. And which all the transit providers can be part of. And we meet about quarterly, and we just talk about what are your needs? What do you guys see out there? We have these funds, how should we do it? And the rule is we hold operations harmless. We fund operations fully. And then the remaining funds, what do we do with it? Where should we invest those? And this is what the committee came up with on how we should do it. Vehicles is pretty high priority, give that 7 and 8% of the remaining funds. We get into the large facilities, new service, the RTCCs, and then marketing and technology. So that's kind of our game plan on how to spend the funds. And we can't thank the technical or the Transit Advisory Committee enough for the good discussion they have, because we get the transit providers together, and you have some really big systems and some really small systems, and you should see how well they work together and look out for each other. Not always what's best for their system, but what's best for the greater Minnesota. And I just love the collaboration that we have there. All right, so did we all hear Scott with CTAA talking about let's not rush to get back to where we were in 2019? Why don't we use some of the things that we learned during this pandemic? It's been an awful thing, but some good things did come out of it. Maybe this was our opportunity to do something new, try something different. So what we've decided for 2022, since we're not back to any kind of normalcy in any way, right? So we're just going to do 1-year operating contracts, and that's calendar year. We just kind of set a 2% general increase over the previous year's budget. There will be no local share for the 5311s. And then they were able to transfer any revenues that they did make into their reserve accounts. So that kind of maybe will help, save for in the future when things maybe aren't, that the federal money might go away, and then this would be kind of the rainy day fund. So that's awesome. And then for the 5307, they did receive their federal funds directly. So no change in the local share for them. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Ryan. All right. So MnDOT does all kinds of planning, right? We have a whole department of planners, right? So that's fantastic. But what about the systems, right? The systems, what are they just supposed to live day to day? And MIPTA came to us and basically said, come on, they need help in that planning aspect. You guys plan all the time. Why don't we do that same thing for the transit systems? So in fall of 2019, there were 30 system plans that were completed for the 5-year plans that looked out through 2025. And so it was an awesome exercise. I think it was really eye-opening for some of the systems to like, oh yeah, this is way easier to be able to relate to our, the people that we work with, the people that do give that local share, to say, this is our plan for the next several years, so they know what to expect. So it was a really good experience. And then the pandemic hit. And so then it was like, oh, all right, well, all those dreams we had, all those big ideas we had, let's put them in check a little bit with our new reality. So in early 2021, staff met with the transit providers and said, hey, how's this impacting you? Are your needs different? Are your priorities different? And we did get a lot of feedback. And then in early 2022 was kind of that time to refresh those plans, because otherwise those plans just become irrelevant. So early 2022 is when we will be looking into refreshing those plans. All right, this is a tiny example of what came out of those plans. Vans. Up to this point, OTAT has kind of not been a fan of the vans, right? Looking into that definition of public transit. And we've just kind of been something we haven't, but it just came out repeatedly in the 5-year plan saying that we really want this. Not all the systems, but some of the systems said this would really help. So the Twin Cities Marathon was on Sunday. And when I was out there, I saw the signs, forward is a great pace. And so that really stuck with me. And I was like, yeah, that's right. Forward is a great pace. We're going to keep moving with this. So OTAT's really looking into this van thing, taking it serious, finding ways that we can try to make this happen. So this is something that, thanks to MIPTA's push to get these 5-year plans out, it's something that came to us that kind of maybe hit us a little harder over the head than like, oh yeah, that's what they've been asking for. So this is something I think a great thing that came out of those plans. All right, so there's all that state law and state rules that make us do things, right? So this is one of those things that it's a good idea, obviously, but so there's the 5-year plans, and then MnDOT has ideas, but the legislature like, okay, for real, show us what your investment plan is in the future. So we do have to come up with an investment plan. The last one was done in 2018. So it's time for us to do kind of that big picture plan thing, update again. Plan thing. Sorry, all the planners are just rolling your eyes at me. Yes, that plan thing. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next couple months here with the scope. We'll have the RFP in early 2022 with completion in 2024. So that's what we're doing with the long range plan. All right, so now I'm going to get into kind of steal everybody else's thunder on all these really good things that are happening in and around transit at MnDOT and around the state. So the first thing, our Office of Sustainability and Public Health. Yeah, that's a great office too. So they came up with an idea of providing $2 million annually for grants between $25,000 and $500,000 for clean transportation. And we got some winner chicken dinner here. We got Arrowhead Transit and City of Morris were both awarded these. So they're working very hard for the battery electric bus and supporting infrastructure. That supporting infrastructure, that's kind of scary. You cannot forget about that part, right? The buses are great, but they're like, oh yeah, now we have to be able to charge them. So yeah, don't forget about the infrastructure part of it. So, but we think that's an awesome thing to partner with our sustainability group. So definitely going to keep that program going and keep supporting that. Another one, I already saw Elliot here this morning. So morning. FTA is Accelerating Innovative Mobility. AIM, what a cool acronym, right? AIM. So OTAT, and if you want more information, because I'm just going to give you this one slide, Elliot's right there. He'll answer any more questions, right? All right. So they partnered with 7 public transit systems to talk about mobility as a service, MOS. I think you have to say the like you're from Boston. Is that Moss? Yeah. So mobility is a service platform, and that'll cover 13 counties in southern Minnesota as a pilot. It is currently negotiating with the vendor right now, and then he loves to throw GTFS. I don't know, GTFS, is it? No. It's a terrible acronym. All right. So that's what they're going to be working on and launching in 2022. So cool things, you guys. Things that are way cool are going to blow people's minds. All right. So another thing we've been working on is monthly webinars. And so again, that's Elliot and Kirby. I think if you are not on that mailing list, get or actually anybody from MnDOT, you can talk to them and get on this mailing list. But they're doing monthly webinars to talk about cool things like mobility, technology, microtransit, mobility hubs. And it sounds like they're starting up again this fall, and they're pretty fun, pretty cool. It's, you know, I feel like the Jetsons after, because it's some cool technology that we just cannot wait to get out there. All right, there's also, I think Gary might know about this too. You might have had to present at one of these. There is the Twin Cities Shared Mobility Collaborative, where experts in the industry get together and talk, and they share ideas, and they hold panel discussions. But so far, they've just done the Twin Cities area. So I'm sure Nick's group is pretty familiar with it, but we want this group to be familiar with it too. So Elliot's working hard to get us statewide in 2022 so that we can expand that knowledge and share it with greater Minnesota instead of just the cool Twin Cities, but also the cool greater Minnesota. So we're working on getting part of that. All right, I'll stop picking on Elliot and Kirby's group, and we will go over to Chuck, because I know Chuck's here too. All right, technology plan. Technology, there you are. Morning, Chuck. So the technology plan is another fantastic thing. We've got so many great transit systems in Minnesota, but we are also different. And that's why we love it, that we're also different, right? Because we fit into our community. So some of them have the best state-of-the-art technology, and other ones are, we still have a phone, and that works for our community. So what the technology is really trying to see where everybody's at, seeing what everybody could use to improve. So Chuck has it said a little more eloquently here, you know, talking with experts in the industry, setting goals, developing recommendations and priorities, and then getting an implementation plan together. So we can really take our technology where we are, and for everybody, doesn't matter where you are, to take it up to that next level that works in our communities. So I think that's a fantastic thing. All right, here's totally, I'm just stealing these slides from Rochester. Is Rochester here? So this is a shuttle, a pilot program that they're doing on the autonomous shuttle. So it came in through the CAV challenge. So that's connected and autonomous vehicles. Not easy to say, no. So the CAV office, they have kind of open solicitations for ideas that come in. And this was one of the projects that was awarded. So it's in Rochester, and it's called the Med City Mover, I believe, and it was opened last Thursday. And there's two of them that does this route. I have the route on the next slide. So there's the route. And so they do have ambassadors on board the shuttle, and it's free, and it makes 2 stops. And so they're gonna leave it up until August of 2022, because you all that have started new service know that you can't just have something for a couple months and say, yep, good, nope, bad. No, it needs to be out there. People need to get used to it. And so with this shuttle service, the goal is really outreach to get people more comfortable with the technology. And so there's a lot of surveys that they do when they're on the shuttle, and then follow-up surveys like, how did you feel? Did you feel safe? And so taking that input to improve the technology. So congratulations to Rochester for doing this project. Fantastic. All right, one more thing here, the COVID research. So that's another thing that we're partnering with the University of Minnesota to just investigate strategies that we can, get people back on the buses. You know, we did hear Scott with CTAA say, we want people on the buses, but we want people on the buses for the right reasons, right? We don't want to aim for the people that are teleworking to force them not to telework, but our ideas is, let's tap the other people that could use this service. And I just think that this is a great research project to evaluate what we're trying to do and who we want to get back on the buses and how we can serve them better. So I think that's a fantastic research project. They're doing a lot of surveys, and we should get the summary from that survey soon. And then it sounds like FTA thought this was pretty cool, and they're going to fund it in 2022. So awesome. And thank you, FTA. All right, so the impacts of COVID on Minnesota, what happened? So definitely, I don't know if you guys are to be shocked by this, but there was a reduction in fare box and system revenue, right? You weren't bringing in like you used to bring in, and that's definitely impact. So then what we were able to do with the CARES Act money that I'll get into in the next slide, but we were able to reduce the local share. There was also, we received funds from the state of Minnesota, and that's calculated based on the receipts from the motor vehicle sales tax, and that was reduced. So that was less state money that was coming in. But then the federal government came in with their emergency relief funds. So, just thank you to like MIPTA for always getting our story out there to the legislators to let them know that this was needed and it is helpful. So yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. And systems that talk to your legislators, thank you for doing that. We need to get our story out there because we do great work. And so thank you for doing that. So this is what we received in the federal relief. We did receive CARES, CARISA, and ARPA funds. So again, that was all because you guys were out there talking to your legislators, telling them how important this service was and how badly we were impacted by the pandemic. So again, thank you for this. And then thank you also for the message. The fly-in came back and said, the federal government is looking to take back any unspent funds. But you know what? MnDOT's not going to have any, not MnDOT, Minnesota won't have any unspent funds because we work to prioritize to spend these funds, and you guys did it. You were great at, getting those budgets set, keeping that service going. And so we can't thank you enough for that partnership to be able to say that there won't be any money for them to claw back in any of these funds. So thank you for doing that. Another thing, I'm just going to steal somebody else's thunder here, is look what you guys did. During this time, things were different, right? And they delivered over 300,000 meals. And the funny part was, were you guys here on Monday when FTA Kelly Brookings did her presentation? She took these pictures. I was like, hey, stealing my thunder here, but no, that's awesome. It needs to be said repeatedly. Thank you for doing these meals. We have Trailblazer Transit. Oh no, they're here. Over 100,000 meals that they delivered, and then also Smart Transit, another 56,000 meals delivered. You guys, thank you for doing that. That's so awesome. You guys are a critical piece to your communities, and so this is just awesome. I love to talk about this stuff. All right, this is my last slide. And again, stealing the thunder here. Sorry, Nick. But the mobile vaccine units, with Metro Transit did a really good job of getting these buses out there. I think there were 6 of them that they drove around the state that, they got to go to places that maybe people weren't as comfortable going in. So they brought the vaccines to them. So kudos to Metro Transit and the Department of Public Health working on this. And then the free rides. I know that several systems were able to do free rides during this time, to sometimes just free rides for, did I hear we're not supposed to say free? Wait, fareless, right? From Scott from CTAA was saying the free kind of sense, but you know what I mean. So fantastic that you were able to do that and provide that service for your communities. So that is what I would just say MnDOT's been up to, but not in any way. That's what you guys have been up to in this last year. And I just can't thank you enough for all the hard work that you do. And I do think that we are going to come back resilient and stronger. And so just thank you for everything you've done. And I'll stand for questions, but the group's pretty quiet. So I wish I had the cricket music. No, but Mark's here to answer any questions. Right, Mark? You know I was going to deal with it. All right. So yeah, any questions? Otherwise, Ryan, I'll give it back to you. And I'm not going to touch this. I'm going to let you do the switching over because I'll mess it up. All right. But thank you, everybody.
So Nick, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, great. So I can advance the slides if you want to just tell me
Yeah,
when.
Sure. Well, good morning, everybody from Minneapolis. Unfortunately, as COVID has impacted so many things, it's impacted our ability to travel from Metro Transit. I really wish I could be there today. I love going to Duluth in particular, but happy to give an update from Metro Transit. What I'm going to focus on today is really our move forward as we come out of the pandemic. We've kind of coalesced around a theme of moving forward to a stronger and better transit system, which is a combination of efforts, which I'll update everyone on today, that is really takes where we were planning pre-COVID to go with building our system out in the metro area, but also taking what we've learned from COVID and our changes to ridership and what our customer expectations are, and redesigning our system going forward. So just a little highlight for those that are unfamiliar with Metro Transit. We are the largest transit provider in the Twin Cities region, and technically, I suppose, in the state. We represent, pre-COVID, we were about 90% of the ridership in the region. And we operate with fixed route, rail, commuter rail, light rail. We are part of the Metropolitan Council, which is the MTO, which also has the ADA transit service and dial-a-ride systems, which are operated separately from Metro Transit. So starting out with what a definition of is what our Stronger and Better program is. It's really looking at all our services from what the customer expects and trying to incorporate any changes in customer expectations for their transit system going forward. No change in the fact that the customer wants a fast and reliable system. Very different expectations for clean, safe, and welcoming. We've noticed a shift in the public expectations there on our system after we come out of COVID. And the more and more we can make it easier to use, we think that'll bring back our ridership. We have an equity focus to all of our decision-making as we are coming out of the pandemic and thinking about our services and changes to our services. We're always thinking it from an equity standpoint. And overall, we know we need to grow back our ridership. And so the changes I'm going to talk about coming up are really around those themes of as we implement all these changes and updates, we believe we'll have a much stronger and better transit system than we did even pre-COVID. Next slide, please. So first our first focus is on the more reliable and faster transit service. So next slide. So we want to thinking about our network and how it's changed and what's really changed from who's using the system. We've had very different impacts depending on the type of service. Our core network, our local and our arterial bus and rail system has been really strong throughout the pandemic, and the ridership is coming back stronger than some of our other services. So we're focusing on those systems first to increase the speed of the service, the reliability of the service, how frequent it is, and as we build back transit service, how we're increasing frequency and the span of service on those core networks first. Particularly as we're having a driver shortages, as many people are, where we assign those resources are really important, and the core network is where we're strongest right now. Our express service is the market that basically disappeared during COVID. We'll talk a little bit about, but we've really moved away from this peaking service. The chart in the lower right, we used to have a very defined AM and PM peak, driven partly by our commuters to downtown business sectors and our express service. That market was reduced by 95% during COVID and is still very low, and anticipate it's going to have the slowest return market. So we've really scaled back our express service to primary corridors and reduced our park and ride system to enable focus around them so we have good service at a limited number of park and rides. Next year, we'll be testing some on-demand service in a core area to see if that attracts ridership. And we do still have a very comprehensive transit expansion plan over the next decade, which I will focus on, but we call that our Network Next campaign. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, our equities in our decision-making, we're focusing, on key questions of where are the different populations living, where are they going, what are our routes that serve those destinations, what are the different travel patterns on each route and each service model, where do we want to make investments in the communities that were hardest hit, both during COVID, but also historically have been underinvested in our region. And then we've, since COVID, we've implemented an annual service equity evaluation that we're beginning to publish that will really drive, I think, both our future decision-making, but be very transparent about why we make investments, where we're making investments, and where our investment needs are. We have really good baseline survey data of our ridership and who they are and where they're going from demographic and income that helps guide our decisions. Next slide, please. So our service levels and our impact and our ridership, we broke it down into each of our cores. We have our strongest service has been our arterial BRT network, which we have been operating at 100% of pre-COVID levels almost throughout the entire pandemic. Part of that is because of social distancing, but also in part because that ridership has really remained the strongest. And that tells us a couple things, is that if we have a service out there that is very easy to use, very reliable, and very frequent in our core system, we will grow our ridership. And so that's where our investment strategies are going. But other reliable and frequent service like LRT have done well too. It's the two services on the right, both our North Star commuter rail and our commuter express that, as I mentioned, will come back slowest. We're operating, I think, at about 40% of our pre-COVID levels on those type of services. Next slide, please. So in speed and reliability, some of the areas that we're investing in, we're increasing our amount of bus lanes at our core bottleneck areas, doing transit signal priority, increasing our investment there, looking at reducing some of our bus stops so that we have more spacing and fewer stops to increase speed. And then really doing some route design to increase the speed of the routes without impacting ridership. Interestingly, one of the COVID impacts on bus lanes is we've been working with our local communities and painting the bus lanes for dedicated bus lanes with red paint. We'd have a lot more of those bus lanes out there this fall, but due to COVID, there's no red paint available in the marketplace. And so just weird things like that are in fact affecting some of our service changes and where we want to go. We did a very comprehensive review of our route levels and are making changes that started in August, which I'll touch on. Next slide, please. So the biggest thing in August, we planned this out 4 months prior to the service change in August, was we anticipated the downtown workforces would, according to all our employers, they'd start coming back right after Labor Day. So we started that planning before Delta arrived. And so that everything has changed in terms of when that workforce is coming back. But we brought back some express service to support that return to work. But we knew we had a reduction. So what we did is we kind of put a compass around the two downtowns and tried to serve some primary corridors with express routes so that everybody had a good route option. Most of the express market, they always drive to their park and rides. So we focused on making larger park and rides with good, reliable service and started that service in late August. Looking forward, we'll probably be making more changes in December, working with our employers. We're not seeing we expected to increase the express market even more in December. We don't think that will be happening until later in 22. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we're testing on-demand service in North Minneapolis. Next year, the contract will be going out for an RFP in the next couple weeks. This is connecting both to some of our core services, our C line, which is our arterial BRT, and kind of expanding a footprint a couple miles around some of the key stations to provide on-demand connections to that 10-minute ABRT service. Next slide, please. So still continuing to build on our future, we're confident that the ridership is going to come back, but we also are also looking at the next 10 to 20 years that our metro area is going to add 800,000 people. And so we need a transit network that can support that. And that, even with the impacts of COVID, that expectation of population growth in the Twin Cities is not changing. Latest the census data that's coming out really reaffirmed the movement of population towards the Twin Cities, and so a need for an expanded transit network in that. Next slide. We're really on building a couple different systems. We are building our arterial BRT network, which is really an upgrade to our existing core services. We're on a path to open a new ABRT line almost every year. Starting next year, we'll be opening the D line. The B line may open in late 23 or 2024. Those are the two busiest local bus routes in our system. And we anticipate that when we open those lines, we'll see a ridership increase of nearly 30% over the strong performance that they were before. These are incredibly popular services with our customers, and actually even popular services with our legislature. We've been very successful in funding these expansions with our bonding requests the past several years, and gotten really strong bipartisan support for investment in these. We're adopting a 20-year plan for expansion of this ABRT network next week. Our council will be adopting that. So we've planned out our lines all the way through the L line in our system and starting to invest in them. Next slide. The next major transitway that opens is actually our Orange line, which is a commuter express and BRT service, all-day service that opens. The first station actually opens in 2 weeks at Lake Street and 35W. This connects Minneapolis downtown to southern suburbs with all-day service in both directions. It has a combination of online stations in the freeway at 2 locations, and then stations adjacent to the freeway at some of the suburban locations. We also are redesigning the connecting bus work to this system. So it's a major system change to our transit service, to a project that's been in the works for, I would say, 10 years. It was coordinated with some major freeway redevelopment. So a major new market that we're creating, first or second of our highway BRT lines in the Twin Cities. Next line, please. And the gold line after that will be our dedicated BRT that connects downtown St. Paul to the eastern suburbs and terminated in Woodbury. That one is on path to start construction next year. We anticipate that will open as soon as 2025. A couple of unique aspects to that connecting to Woodbury, which is one of our growing suburbs job markets, which doesn't have good all-day service today. And some major employers, not just in downtown St. Paul, but connects the world headquarters to 3M as an example. So expecting a good new service there with connecting routes and express routes. Next slide, please. And our rail lines, you may have read in the news a little bit about some of our rail lines, and we continue the construction of the Green Line, which is also known as the Southwest LRT, the largest transit project ever built in the state, and I think the largest infrastructure project ever built in the state. Massive undertaking to build that light rail, which is an extension of the light rail line that connects downtown Minneapolis to downtown St. Paul. This will now continue our expansion of our transitway of all-day reliable service out into the southwest suburban markets, including the third largest job market in the southwest of the Twin Cities. This is a complicated project that we have not announced a new revenue service date. Quite a few engineering challenges on it. I think we have 43 structures and 4 tunnels and freight rail and everything complicated you can think of to build on. This is what we're building through, but it's going to be a great service when we open it. And the Blue Line extension is extending the light rail that goes from Mall of America through the airport to downtown Minneapolis to the northwest suburbs. That is going through a new alignment study right now. We anticipate next Q1 of 22 to announce the new alignment, which will allow us to begin the environmental and design stages of that. We had to change our alignment of that very late in the game of the design because we could not reach an agreement with a freight rail. But again, that expects a very strong ridership and connecting our continued expansion into our suburban markets. Next slide, please. There's a lot of the public has been focused on the vehicles and cleaning vehicles, as has been mentioned a few times already this morning. So that's been our focus because that's a customer expectation. The next slide. So we'll be continuing our extended cleaning service that we implemented with COVID even through the next for the foreseeable future. But it also is a long-term strategy of our environment. We've made major changes to our bus design to allow us ease of cleaning and better clean environment for the public. We've completely changed our LRT seating to improve the cleanliness there and cleaning ability. But also when we talk about clean buses with the public, they're talking about emissions too. And so the legislature provided us money to create a zero emission bus plan and have that completed by September of 22. So we're on or February of 22. So that plan will be rolled out early next year. In our capital improvement, we are starting to dedicate funding to electric buses. We have 8 buses coming in this year. We've had some challenges like many have with our electric bus that we've already had. The bus that you see in the picture is from our C line. I just got passed today on the street by that C line bus. They are about to go back in service. We had some challenges with the chargers, but things are looking promising that they'll be back in service soon. And our capital improvement plan has identified funding for 100 electric buses in the next 6 years. We're hoping for more based on the federal infrastructure plan too. Next slide. I had already mentioned our focus on light rail vehicles. That's been a key improvement that we've made during COVID and we will continue. Next slide, please. And it's not just the fleet that we're focusing on. Since 2014, we've really changed our approach to the bus stop. We created a Better Bus Stop program, which was really an equity first program, looking at who's served with bus shelters and heat at shelters and proper lighting and who is not. And we clearly saw that there was some inequitable distribution of that within our network. So we've really focused on that since 2014, adding extensive new shelters, replacing old ones, adding heat at a lot of locations. You know, our ABRT network and our LRT network all have really high quality shelters and heating and lighting, but we are extending that to the bus system. And over the next 5 years, a large amount of our shelter structure will be improved to serve the public because it is their entry point to our transit system. And with our cold winters and other elements, we want a good and welcoming environment for them. Next slide, please. We have added quite a few staff in the past 6 months to enhance our cleaning of our infrastructure. That is one thing that really came on focus with COVID and expectations of the public. And also with our transitway expansion, really a new focus on better snow removal to get access to our stations and shelters and making sure that they're accessible to all very quickly after any of the major storms. So we've added a lot of support staff in that area in the past 6 months, and it's really been helped by the COVID federal funding has allowed us to do some places that we've wanted to expand in the past, but just haven't had the resources to do. So that's a great investment we're seeing pay off. Next slide, please. We have a series of major transit center improvements that we're redoing throughout our system. These are major hubs that have a lot of people moving through them. They're systems that were really starting to be out of date. Started with our major revamp of the Mall of America station, the largest station for ridership in the network. That was completed just before COVID, but we've expanded that to our almost an annual basis to do major increases to our other transit centers throughout the system. Next slide, please. Safety and security has been absolute critical at the mind of the public and getting them back into riding transit. So it has been one of our focuses that has gone on throughout COVID. Next slide, please. We are doing major expansion to how we're approaching safety on our system, starting with adding of over 50 staff that are community service officers. These are ones that will be riding our transitways, doing some fare inspections, but just adding some presence on the system that people really have told us are important for them to feel secure. Our safety and security investment is also in the infrastructure. So as I mentioned, the bus shelters and lighting and cleaning, that is an element of the safety. We have upgraded our real-time information cameras. That has really added the information that is flowing to our police force for real-time response. Homelessness has really became an issue at the peak of COVID. We created a homeless action team that is, we do not lead in the homeless effort in the region, but we're a part of that. And so we have team members supporting a multi-agency effort to address homelessness, not on transit system, but in the region that also impacts our transit system itself. And we have lots of partnerships with trusted community resources to really work on improving safety and responsibility and of those who are riding and in and around our system, and with some of our youth agencies and other agencies, just unique partnerships to approach safety comprehensively. Next slide. Customers also have an increasing expectation of better information to use the system. So we have a focus there. Next slide, please. We have done major improvements to our website, but a lot of our work has been investing in our backend system so that our actual trip information for the customers, particularly in the real time, is far more accurate than it was pre-COVID. We've made a lot of investments there. It's really important that we tell them when the bus is going to be there and reliability, because it helps them be more open to riding transit, especially for those reluctant potential riders. But it's also a really important part of, they tell us about safety and security, that they want to know when the bus is going to be there, and so not have to wait very long. So dramatic improvements we've been making there, and we'll continue to invest in our system so that the information is accurate and meets expectations of the public for mobile information in there. Next slide, please. And also this summer, we really did change our promotions to get people back onto transit. So we had quite a few different areas that I'll talk about around promoting transit again, for those, particularly those that used to be transit riders that we want to come back to the system. So the next slide. Our biggest one is we had a fare sale we went to dollar fares for September and October. We made this decision back when we thought everybody would be going back to work in the downtown areas. That hasn't necessarily aligned, but we are seeing a lot of people come back from school, colleges and high schools, and even the younger grades. And so this has been a real positive impact there. This is something we'll look at. Do we want to continue this or not? But just really, it's almost a thank you to our riders that stayed with the system for what they've went through, that give them a discount. This is where the federal COVID relief has really helped out also. And we also did major discounts for our pass system to make sure that people are comfortable coming back onto the system. A lot of the office workers that have passes maybe are not coming back full time. So this is a way that gets them to sign up for the passes again, but also does not commit them to having to work to use the system every day. And all our regional providers, not just Metro Transit, are participating in this. Next slide, please. We have a major marketing campaign. We had these different phases where we kind of went from a safety, you can travel responsibly. That's when COVID was peaking, to telling the customers this summer we were ready for them. It's time to come back, and talking about all the things we've done to make it ready for them when they're comfortable. And then this fall, it's really that we're back in business. Here's some promotions. It's safe to ride. So a lot of campaigns that went through different phases to bring back our ridership, and it's been real effective in that case. Next slide, I think, is my last slide. So that's what we're doing about this fall, but we continue to work. We know we have a lot of work ahead of us to bring back this ridership and then start growing our ridership beyond pre-COVID. So we're looking at our service, making adjustments on a quarterly basis, really trying to figure out this express commuter market, what's going to happen with the downtown markets. Thinking about, we've learned a lot about our fare structure. It was geared around peak period fares. We really should rethink our fare structure in the long term and go through a process with the public to see what our fare structure should be. And again, focus on equity. So with that, that concludes my slide. I think we have a couple minutes if there's any questions.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Okay, I guess not. Well, thank you very much for participating.
Well, thank you, everyone. This concludes our agency update section. We would thank our participants, Ian, Nick, and Tori. We have sessions starting at, one session starting at 9:15, the rest starts at 9:30. All the sessions will be held on this level here. As a reminder, lunch will be held in this room at 12 o'clock, and we encourage you to come because we are giving away some gift cards at the conclusion of our lunch keynote speaker session. So enjoy the sessions. See you for lunch. And congratulations to the preview of the winners who will win the gift cards. I know somebody in this room will probably win. So enjoy the conference. See you at lunch. Thank you.
What was it? Okay.